think it's a good time to start, right? Storytelling. For the Nigerians, you will know this one. Story, story, story. Once upon a time. We've been telling stories since forever. And those who even remember Tales by Moonlight, we've been telling stories since by moonlight under the tree. But now this is about storytelling for business. And we see that all across the world, people are now crafting their stories, telling compelling stories that convince customers, even convince suppliers, convince their entire ecosystem to buy into their idea, their concept, their products, right? And today we have Teva Bendega. She's the regional marketing manager for Africa for Bolt. Teva, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. We can't wait to hear the whole information that you have to share with us. But we had already shared, in the communication, it's about how can you craft your own story? How can you create your narrative, own that narrative, and, define what is being said about your product, about your brand, about your service within the market. Of course, there are multiple advantages of doing that. But, some of us have that difficulty of how do I turn my benefits into a story? And that's what Teva is going to share with us this evening. And Teva, I would let you introduce yourself. You will go through the presentation over, a 30 minutes period, and then our audience are able to ask as many questions as they want. But people, please feel free to already type your questions in the chat box as it occurs to you. There's no need to wait till the end. We're going to take we will try as much as possible to take every single question. And the target is to end at about 6:05 Lagos time, as the case may be. Teva, over to you.
Yes, so thank you guys. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Eco Innovation Center, for inviting me here. My name is Teva Bendaga. I work with Bolt. I'm the lead marketing person in the team. I basically service the African market. So I work for all our markets across Africa, whether that's South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda. Yeah, so figuring out how to tell the Bolt story across Africa. And I'm here to pretty much talk about storytelling your way to startup success and basically figuring out how to turn great products, which a lot of people have, into powerful stories, which is kind of like the gap that I see in the market. So let's get into it. And the first question is, why do we tell stories? What's the thing about stories that make them so appealing? And I'm gonna say a bit about myself and my story. So, like I said, my name is Teve, small family, come from a very, very small family. I think like we're two kids. So I was a very pampered child growing up. When I was starting out, I used to be very argumentative. So my parents always thought, oh, she's going to study law. But then by the time I was ready to go to university, I was just 14. So it didn't make sense to send me to university, at least not to a federal university. So they said, okay, go to Covenant. And I did, and I studied mass comm. So by my third year, I was pretty sure I was going to be a journalist. And in 2007, I got the opportunity to have an internship at Punch. And I was on the Metro desk. And for anyone who knows the Metro desk in the paper, that's pretty much the crime desk. And there you get to uncover, it's pretty much investigative journalism. You get to uncover some very interesting stories. So I remember at that time, the most interesting story that I did was a story about a brothel that was in the same building as a church and a mosque. And at that time, that was a big, very, it was very interesting story. That
Indeed, those three somehow don't align. They don't go together. How can they possibly be in the same building?
Yeah. So whatever the version of print journalism virality was at that time, that was what happened with that story. And graduating, doing NYSC, and then figuring out what's next for me. And I thought, you know what, let me try my hands on digital marketing. This journalism thing, maybe I'll come back to it, but let's try digital marketing for a bit. So I worked at World Fusion, which at that time was one of the leading digital marketing agencies in Nigeria. And I did that for about 6 months. And then I thought digital is interesting, but I'd like to know more about like traditional, just more above the line marketing, just IMC in general. And so when I got the opportunity to move to Center Spread, I did. And working there was very revealing, because what that did for me was it made me kind of understand like consumer behavior, which I now consider to be the crux of how I approach strategy, because I approach it thinking, how do consumers think? What do consumers want? How do you reduce the barrier to entry for consumers? How do you control inertia? You know, so that was really what I learned in Center Spread. And I worked there for about 2 years. And then I thought, you know what, I think it's time to do a master's, because I always thought I'll do a master's someday. I really like school, by the way. I don't like the exam part, but I like the being in school bit. And then I did that for a year. And then when I came back to Nigeria, I joined the team at Bolt. At that time, we were 7 staffers. And then, well, from then till now, which has been about 3.5 years, I've been helping build the future of transportation across Africa. And recently I started a blog. It's tevebendaga.com. And I think at the time I was starting the blog, my mindset was, there's lots of conversations that I like to have in my personal life that I have when I sit down with my friends and I talk about, but I don't see many people having those conversations on the internet. And so I called the blog, or the diaries, Impolite Diaries, because what I want to do there is not just to help brands tell better stories, but also have the conversations that people consider impolite, you know, too impolite to have in polite company, like I like to say. And that's what I'm doing with the blog at the moment. So I'm having all the conversations that a lot of people are a bit too chicken to have. So yeah, why do we tell stories? What's in a story? And I just told you my story, and I think the reason we tell stories is that stories help define us. They kind of shape the way we see the world, you know. And we consume the world as human beings. We consume the world in the form of stories. When you're growing up, if your parents want to teach you to stop being greedy, they tell you the story of Ijapa Tiroko. If they want to teach you a story about chastity, they show you a story in the Bible about Ruth. You know, so stories are the way that we interpret the world. And because we do it from such a young age, it becomes the way that we interpret life and the best way for sales to happen. So yeah, I mean, on the surface, it sounds simple, right? And I like to say that the conundrum that I see in the tech space is that tech founders are usually like super smart people. You meet the average tech guy and he can tell you, here's my product, here's the solution, here are all the technical things that go behind it. They can tell you a great many things about the solutions and the USPs. But tech people and entrepreneurs in general are notoriously terrible at storytelling. And I think the reason for that, well, there's 2 reasons for that. But one reason is that there's a lot of focus on the small details, kind of the features and technologies that power their solutions. And the problem with this is it's a valid method, but it's also really difficult for people to follow. And the truth is that not knowing how to tell good stories is kind of missing an opportunity. And I say this because having worked in a company that was a really small startup, and I like to tell people that when I started at Bolt, my marketing budget was shy of 200,000 naira, you know, so it was a really tiny budget. And I know that that's the budget that a lot of people are working with today as they start up, or even smaller. So the thing is, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that can help stretch that money for all that it's worth. But if you don't know how to tell compelling stories, you're going to miss even those little opportunities that can make a big difference. And I thought to just think a bit about why a lot of entrepreneurs are so focused on the jargon, especially in the tech space. And one example that I like to give is with Bitcoin. I find that there's a lot of people who have started amazing Bitcoin companies. And in general, I think I consider myself to be a smart person. I think I have above average intelligence, but I don't understand Bitcoin. And I think that's because it's always explained in a very technical, high sounding way. And I think as a society, the problem that I see is that we glamorize big words as a society. People like Patrick, I forget his last name now, but people like that go viral for just saying like a lot of words that we don't really know exactly what they mean, but they sound interesting. And so we believe that big words equals big ideas. And in a sense, it is true that big words help you convey some sort of authority, some sort of intelligence. However, there's a barrier with these words. There's an understanding barrier. And I think it was Richard Branson that said, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to first of all become a good storyteller. And if you need more convincing about why storytelling is important, I would say consider the Kickstarter and GoFundMe example. These are two businesses that are built upon the premise that stories are so compelling that people will be willing to bring out money to back projects if the story is told right. And I think we've seen numerous examples of that. I think there's a girl in Nigeria who, even in the midst of the pandemic, raised over 20 million to go to Harvard. And I think that story stunned me because I was like, everyone is shouting there's no money, but someone has told a story that's compelling enough that people across the world have brought money out of their wallet and funded her journey. And it's the same thing with even more whimsical things like Erica being disqualified from Big Brother. You know, at my last count, 14 million had been raised for her. So the power of storytelling is far-reaching. And the reason for that is threefold. Number one is that people love a good story. But more importantly, people buy a good story. A story that's told, I think the human brain is wired towards clarity other than confusion. So stories are a sense-making device. And there's something called the fluency theory that explains that in more detail. The second reason that startups need to tell better stories is that stories are cheap. You know, like, it doesn't cost you anything. Well, maybe it costs you some time, but it doesn't cost you anything to sit down and decide on what your story would be and start telling that story compellingly across all verticals. The thing with a good story is good stories get shared, right? Jargons get forgotten, but good stories get shared, which means that the organic reach that you can get from a good story is incredible. And then the third reason is, as a startup, you need investors, you need employees, you need consumers. And all these people don't buy the best products. They buy the products that they understand, right? And this is what storytelling does for you. So storytelling is the key to developing a strong startup brand. And the question is how. I think like when we talk about why, everybody kind of gets it. Okay, yes, we get it, Heather. This is good for the business. Now, how do I do it practically? And well, my first how is think of storytelling like a fantastical movie. I used to be a big movie buff. I think in recent years, I have not been able to keep up that lifestyle anymore. But one thing I understand about movies, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this example, is that movies have a clear, at least good movies, have a clear sequence. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And the beginning is usually wrapped around an origin story. And what the origin story does for us is that it humanizes the superhero, right? So if you think about Tarzan's parents were British and they went on an expedition and they lost him in the jungle, and that's how he started getting raised. If you think about Superman came from planet Krypton, and you know his parents had to build a spaceship to get him to Earth safely, and then they discovered his adoptive parents on Earth discovered that he had these magical superpowers. So origin stories help humanize people and make them relatable. When you tell your story as a person, it makes people realize that this is where your passion comes from. It comes from the fact that maybe you saw people getting disenfranchised and you want to see more people have access. Maybe it comes from the fact that you used to live a very busy life and you now can see the need for people to pay more attention to their families. So there's always an origin story that helps establish credibility for you. The second thing with superheroes or fantastical movies is that they exist to resolve a conflict, right? So superheroes only exist because there is an opposition, a villain, or a problem to be solved. In the absence of that, he's just Clark Kent, just doing his everyday work and wearing his glasses, right? So the thing is to find the lowest common denominator that's a problem for the audience and sell that. And one of the brands that I've seen doing that in recent years has been Eden Life. They're a Nigerian brand, and pretty much they help professionals get organized. So if you're a young professional and you need like your house tidied or laundry done or meal plans done, like you can subscribe to them and they basically take over everything that has to do with your personal care. And when I think about that, it makes perfect sense to me because one, the people who founded the company, they come from that lifestyle, so they understand the credibility is ascribed to them because that's really their story. You can sense the passion off of the backstory of them. And then, you know, the stories that they exist to give professionals the freedom to focus on the truly important things. And it's similar to Bolt as well. You know, you can think of Bolt as a ride-hailing platform, but in reality, the conflict is not everybody can afford to have a car, you know, and being able to democratize that access to private cars and pretty much put a car in everybody's pocket via an app is a conflict that is being resolved through a solution. Next, how is to ask the question of why and how. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. To say how, which is what's in it for the cost, sorry, why, which is what is it for the consumer, and how, which is what do you do that's different? What's the process? What do you do that no one else on the market does, you know? And I give the example here of SoundCloud. SoundCloud on the surface is an online audio distribution company, similar to everything else, similar to what's it called? What's the name of Jay-Z's platform? Anyway, Apple Music and Spotify and the rest of them. But what they've done is they've identified what the why of the reason that they do things. So unlike all other platforms, SoundCloud is the launch pad for up and coming artists, right? It's basically saying what's next in music, what's going to blow up in music happens first on SoundCloud. And there's proof points for that because people like Drake and Bryson Tiller have, off of the bat of the engagement from SoundCloud, been able to shoot up their careers to global domination. And the how is even more important because the how says what we've done as a platform that's different from what everyone else does is, in addition to being a music distribution platform, we've married the world of social media into online distribution such that people can like, share, comment, and engage. And that way they can start building a cult following and grow that all the way through. So the next thing is to spark action. When you're building a story for your brand, you want to think about, this is my origin story. This is why and how I do what I do. And then this is why this is what you should do. So now you've heard my story. This is what I want you to do, right? And the first thing I say is for people to pitch themselves against their biggest competitors. And the reason that I say that is because I believe that when you enter a market and there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players, don't focus on number 5 to 10 or number 3 to 10. That's fine. They can continue to stay there. You need to focus on the number 1 because the number 1 guy has a lot of popularity. So the minute you go and position yourself as the alternative to that number 1 guy, what that does for you is that you're immediately seen as the number 2 option. So that's the cheapest way to cut time to market share. It's the shortest cut to that. So that's one thing I always say. And the second thing is to make it incredibly simple to move from awareness to purchase. And the way to do that is to not offer customers too many options. And I can't say this enough. I tell those people that inertia is the enemy of. So people always think the reason I'm not selling is because there's so many competitors in the market. A lot of times the reason you're not selling is because you have given people too many options. I gave the example last week of on my blog of a banana bread that I went to. And because she had 10 different variants, I couldn't decide what to go for. And that happens because I think there's 2 things that happen when customers have too much choice. Either 1, they're confused and they just don't buy because a confused customer will not buy. Or 2, they buy, but they experience buyer's regret because they're wondering about the trade-off. They're wondering, oh, I got chocolate bread, but should I have gotten Oreos? Should I have gotten... So you're reducing their satisfaction by offering them too many options. So that's something with action. Always think about what's the call to action at the end of my story. Another thing is about authenticity. People talk about authenticity all the time, but I always say that even if you're not genuinely an authentic person, at least try to pretend. Like, you can fake it. Go ahead and fake it until you make it. And one way to ensure authenticity is to, number 1, and this is very important, tell the same story everywhere. You can't tell one story in PR or on a radio interview and then on your blog you're telling a different story. I know there have been people who've been called out for telling us 10 different stories of how they made their first million. Your story has to be consistent every time you tell it. And then talk like you're talking to a friend. Like, think about how do you engage with your friends, and do the exact same thing, whether you're giving a PR interview or you're talking on a website or you're writing for a blog. Like, just talk because people don't buy from big establishments. They like to buy or they like to listen to their friends, right? So if you position your brand as a friend, people are more likely to listen to you. And it works wonders. This is one of my favorite ones with storytelling. It's figuring out how to turn a negative to a positive. And I say that all brands have weaknesses. There's no product in this world that doesn't have a weakness. But the thing with storytelling is if you look at a story long enough, you might find out how to look at it from a different perspective such that a negative can become a positive. And I'll give you an example. In the 80s, Heinz was under a lot of attack. So Heinz is the ketchup brand. I'm sure everybody knows this. Heinz is the ketchup brand. And there was a lot of negative sentiment around how difficult it was to get the ketchup out of the bottle. So you turn it upside down, you pat it, and it would take forever to run. And then, they thought, let's run a marketing campaign to explain ourselves. But, a lot of brands would have buckled under the pressure and thought, this is tough. Do we change our product? Do we change the bottle? But guess what they did? They said, Heinz is too rich to run. Heinz is slow because it's so rich, it's so thick, it's full of so much nutrients that it can't run. And I'm going to show you a video of exactly how that looked. It's one of my favorite campaigns. I hope everyone can see this. I'm just going to play.
So slow. Heinz, the slow ketchup. Heinz is too thick, too rich to run. There are other ketchups that run out faster. They're thinner, runnier. But Heinz, you get every drop of taste. Heinz, the S-L-O-W, slow ketchup.
So Heinz basically said everyone else can run and they'll be fine, but we're not going to run. We're too rich to run.
Even the video was too rich to run because the video itself was slow.
they took their sweet time. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to presentation mode. Okay, fantastic. And then another technique is comparison or exaggeration. Now this one works brilliantly because consumers love a good comparison story. This one, you can either do it by showing solution A versus B. And I know this is something that Apple and Samsung do all the time, pitching themselves against each other. Or imagine a world without your product and then showing how bad that world would be. My mom was telling me yesterday that Union Bank did a campaign like that. Apparently, they have the tallest building in Marina, and they did a campaign where they said, imagine the financial skylines without Union, unimaginable. And I thought that was quite brilliant because, it sends the message in very few words. So yeah, practical tips. I think one thing that entrepreneurs need to do better is to build relationships with the media. The media is such a powerful tool. And I know that PR in Nigeria is paid for, but if you build good relationships, there's a lot of things that you can get for free. There's a lot of opportunities you can get to explain things and, give perspectives on why or give commentary. So one thing you should focus on is to build those relationships and don't miss an opportunity to tell your story. Anytime you have the chance to get on a platform and say, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how we do it, always take the shot. Remember that there are no winners or losers in a negotiation. So when you enter into a negotiation situation, don't think, oh, I want to have the upper hand. Think, what benefits me that benefits this person so that we can have a long-lasting relationship. And the third thing, and this is so important, is to have a storytelling Bible for your business. The thing that I see sometimes is that the founder might know the story, the co-founder might know the story, but everyone else does not. So there needs to be one single source of truth that everybody who gets onboarded is introduced to from the beginning, right? And I mean, that's pretty much it. I think my final thing, I say this all the time, be a student of consumer behavior because there's so much magic in understanding human beings and the way that they think. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. That was short, sweet, straightforward. Thanks. I mean, that you did touch on a number of really, really important things and about how it is the story that connects the customer or your audience with you as an individual, with your products or with your service. And a lot of times we just want to focus on these are the features that my product has or have. However, it is about how is it solving tangible solutions, or how has it helped, or how have I even come to the points that I've come to. Mustafa put in the chat room and said, the perfect example is Obama. Obama used storytelling actually all through his campaign, even all through his administration as well. And that continued to make, his audience quite connected to him. He seemed so real beyond just the, leader who, or just this someone sitting in the position of president. I would read a few questions. I think one of the key things that, we would like this to be will be a conversation. Thankfully, we have enough time. Thank you, Teva. You have been one of my best hosts, one of my best guests when it comes to time management. So I'm very happy to unmute people who want to speak, you want to make a comment, or you want to ask questions. Please raise your hand and then we can ask. But someone is actually asking about platforms, right? And said, social media. So using social media to sell your story. Right? Which app is best for a travel or, travel lifestyle business when you start to talk about social media?
Well, a travel and lifestyle business, from my experience, I would say Instagram remains the best platform in Nigeria. And that's because when it comes to lifestyle, it's very visual, and you want to be able to show people, oh, this is how it works. These are the packages. This is all the fun that we're having on this trip. So I would say Instagram. But one thing I always advise people on a more general note outside of like lifestyle brands is when you're starting out, don't be afraid to test as many platforms as possible, because things may surprise you, So when you're starting out, you have nothing to lose. You don't have a brand to protect, right? So try everything. Try Facebook, try Telegram, try Messenger, try everything, and then see which ones work the best. So when you do that, don't only try platforms, try different days and times of the day, because the algorithms on social media platforms are very tricky. So the thing is, the more you try them, the more you understand and start to see patterns, right? So you see, oh, if I post on Monday, this is how much engagement I get. If I post on Tuesday, here's what happens. So just test out different things. Don't be afraid to test out as many channels and as many types of engagement as possible. Yeah. The thing with testing things, I mean, in advertising, they call it A/B testing. Is that you start to establish patterns, and then you can start to kind of build, this is what works for my business, this doesn't work, and then you can quickly scale up from there.
You're right, actually. And from a social media point, it's also to see where are your customers, where, your buyer persona, where really are they? Because you still have quite a strong usage of Facebook, depending, of course, on what you are selling.
Facebook, when it comes to ads, is the best platform, hands down. But I think why I said Instagram is because, I mean, that was specifically a travel and lifestyle company. And, those are where the bulk of people who are financially savvy are. But if you're selling a product that's like a product for like a mass consumer, you should definitely never ignore Facebook. Because I think people think that people are no longer on Facebook, but there's millions of people on Facebook. It's still the platform that will give you the best CPM and the best CPA. So definitely go for it.
Great. Ohazulike, I saw your hand up. Looks like the hand is down now. So I'm going to unmute Stewart. So he asked his question. Stewart, please accept my request to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, Ma, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Deva, thank you so much. Very, very fantastic presentation. I have a question. So one of the key things I learned in one of the TechBiz series some weeks ago was for those of us in building tech products, not to just sell features, but to sell benefits, right? And then now, talking about stories. So we have an e-commerce platform for a unique product we're about to launch, and it covers various target markets. And so we've been able to create some stories for each of these target markets. So my question is it a good way to go, or you should stick to one story for your brand, or you can create different stories for different target markets? Or will it be in such a way that if this target market sees the story you created for the other target market to be as if you're not consistent with your story. So, which is actually the way to go. Thank you so much.
What did you say? You said you're an e-commerce company?
Yes, we're about to launch by November.
Okay. So I would say that when it comes to, okay, so first of all, I'll give an example of a product category that I think does this quite well, and that's like phone manufacturers. Phone manufacturers have all sorts of phones for different tiers of the economy or different LSM segments. And what they do is there's an umbrella brand. So there's an umbrella story that they want to tell. If it's an iPhone, it's a story of elegance. If it's Samsung, it's a story of function, of efficiency. So whatever that story is, let that story be consistent. However, when it's time to target specific phone types for specific segments, you can then not losing efficiency, but saying here's how efficiency fits for you as this segment. So efficiency for someone who is an A class could mean when I come into my house, I want my phone to put on my light. But efficiency for someone in the C segments could mean I want a phone that the camera is good. And efficiency for someone in the F class could mean I want a phone that the battery lasts long. So the consistency in the story is that this brand is efficient. The way that efficiency, what that efficiency means to each consumer segment could be different. So peg that to whatever the use case for that segment, for this specific segment you want to talk to is, but don't lose the big picture story. My brand is a brand that helps you get more out of life. So yeah, that's my answer.
No, I think it does make quite a lot of sense, especially because this platform, all right, is solving a certain problem, right? In any case, that's the bedrock of an entrepreneur. You're solving a problem. Now, how is it solving that problem for each category of customer, and that you convert into a certain story? And truth be told, sometimes we think that the story has to be my experience or somebody else's experience. Actually, it can be created. About someone who arrives in the house and it's raining and he has lost his keys and all he needed to do was speak and a voice recognition and the door opens. So, because that then becomes, almost reality, and I can see myself in that situation, and that story connects with me. I can see Henry's hand up, so I'm going to unmute Henry. Please accept my request to unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Henry, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My question is, I work in the construction industry, and I have this product solution I'm trying to create.
Henry, can you speak up, please?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. I said I work in the construction industry, and I have this product solution that I'm working on. But then it's something that is going to make a particular trade in construction very easy and kind of more easy, better, and faster for all round purposes. But then I don't know. It's quite going to be for clients that will be able to pay, like kind of a luxury kind of thing. So how do you create brands? How do you create a kind of a story that matches for those type of clients that are able to pay? That's what kind of story do you create that will help a particular kind of client see you as a premium person that's offering a particular service?
Okay. So one thing that I always say is that marketing is not magic, right? What marketing does is it amplifies things that exist. So first of all, if you're targeting a premium or the premium end of the market, you need to make sure that the product itself is something that appeals to the premium end of the market. Once that's in place, it's then a question of defining what do I want to say to them that no one else is saying. And this is where lateral thinking comes in. This is where figuring out first of all, what's no one else saying, what's true about my product, and what will appeal to my consumer. When you're able to figure out these three things, it would then be easy for you to position yourself for that market. And don't forget about channels as well. In addition to the content of your messaging, the channel through which you distribute the messaging is also important. So if you're targeting a high-end consumer, you should think about what do they watch, where do they go. So those are some of the things that help you position yourself for that audience.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Deva.
much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, Hazulike, I think I found you finally.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Trevor. I'm very delighted to be here. I actually asked my question in the chat box, but let me voice it out. Because a young graduate who has a shop here in the market selling perhaps foodstuffs, something like rice and the rest of it, how could such persons tell stories? Or are you saying that storytelling is just for those who are working in the um, larger part of like those, not for those who are in the market? So I'm talking about those who are really in the market, those who sell foodstuffs, like someone who sells rice. What type of story can the person convey to be able to market or scale up his business? Thank you.
So I wouldn't say that marketing is my expertise. However, one thing that I do know is that some of my favorite marketers are those people who sell drugs in buses. Like, I love those guys. Those guys will have you believing that there's one drug that can solve 100 problems, right? And that's because they tell their story in such a compelling way that you have no choice but to believe and at least say, okay, do you know what, I'm going to try it out. So I don't think that storytelling is not the exclusive preserve of a particular end of the market. It belongs to everyone, right? Some of the best stories are very mass market stories. But speaking about, first of all, like, you know the market well, you know the times of the day that work, you know the places in the market that are that attract the most crowd, you know. So there's certain things that you can start to think about. And don't forget that you need to also think about moving your business online, because that's the future. So if your business is strictly offline, then that's something to definitely consider, because who's to say that another pandemic or something else couldn't happen that will render physical markets obsolete, you know. So you need to think about all of those things. But the principles of storytelling apply whether you're standing in the market and shouting to customers to come and patronize you, or whether you're online saying the same things to people. I've seen people literally stand on the road and sell moi moi, you know, and get people to come in there and get excited about their product. So there's no limit to where you can take it with storytelling.
I think, Hazulike, thanks for asking the question, and well done. I think it's a great thing that you're doing about selling food, which is such an important thing. And, you know, no matter what happens, we must eat rice, unless you have a health challenge that the doctor said, don't eat rice. Yeah. All of us will eat rice. Can I just recommend, I've read this book, and anyone else can read it, Stories for Work. And it's Stories for Work talks about the essential guide to business storytelling. You know, it kind of gives us a framework of the spaces within which, or the kinds of stories that people connect with. It talks about 40s. It's transition, it's tension, it's tragedy, and it's triumphs. So you've had triumphs, or you've had tragedies, or you've had tension, you have transition connected to that product or service or benefits that you are offering. Let me give you an example. Mr. President, or former Mr. President, Goodluck Jonathan. What was one of his critical campaign anchors?
I didn't have shoes.
Thank you. Was that not a story?
Yeah.
That was a story of what you could almost say like a tension in his life at a certain point. And when he started in that angle, what did we all start to think? Oh, he has suffered before. He will know the plight of the common man. So that is actually the power of storytelling. And we live it every day. The other thing will be, observing the things that are happening around us and using those as stories. Hazlike, if you sell food, so there's a lot of hunger around us. And in some cases also, it is what is happening in the market. Imagine how many lives and how many different stories emanating from the market, whether it's people fighting or something happened last night and all of that. So indeed, the happenings around us are what we pull together to create stories that then we create a certain kind of tension that our own product is the solution let's say, to that tension. I mean, that's my contribution to that. I want to unmute more people, but there are a number of questions still in the chat box. So, Trevor, what do I do? Which one?
It's really up to you.
All right, that's fine then. So Mustafa is asking, in such a fast changing atmosphere, how fast could particular stories become irrelevant? Or he puts it in another way, can stories become irrelevant at a certain point?
I think good stories stand the test of time, and a good story that has stood the test of time is the story of Jesus. Like stories from the Bible, they've been told for hundreds of centuries, and people are still interpreting them in their own ways today. I mean, even if you think about like superhero stories, I mean, I know I'm a superhero nerd. People keep retelling the same stories, maybe making like slight tweaks to them. So think about Lion King and how Beyonce has put a twist on it in the live action retelling of that story. But the story itself should be consistent. There's businesses like Amazon, for example, which, by the way, if you look in the presentation, I shared a letter that Jeff Bezos sent to the Senate, where he shares his full story and talks about like what has kept Amazon growing till today, you know. And I think those are the best stories, the stories that, you know, you can make adaptations to how they sound today, but the core of the story doesn't change. Because to be honest, like a good story is a good story. A story that is good has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But I was saying that a story that's good would persist, right? A good story will persist. You can make adaptations and modifications as the times go on, but a story of efficiency remains efficiency 10 years after. Happiness, as Coke has been selling to us for centuries, remains happiness. And the thing with human behavior is that if you look through time, human behavior doesn't change as radically as we like to believe that it does. You know, people are people. At their core, they want to be loved, they want to be understood, they want to be cared for. Those things don't change. So whether you have a child today or in 20 years, the child is still going to come out wanting those fundamental things. The things that are fundamental to us, the common denominators which is the thread that binds us as human beings, those things don't change. So there's no need to keep updating your story day on day. Just like have a consistent story. If it requires some modification or a version of retelling in a couple of years, that's fine. But you shouldn't think of storytelling as something that you constantly update, because then people start to question the authenticity of the original message, you know. So yeah, just like when you find the story that works for your business, stick to it.
Thanks. One more question from the chat room before we start to unmute someone else. So this is about, you remember you talked about competition, right? Where you should be targeting the market leader within your industry. And Oros is asking, what are the strategies to compete with your greatest competitor? Because you said aim at number one. And of course, you know, our ears have tingled on that. We want to hear more.
So, I mean, the strategies for that are very broad, and there are a lot of lateral thinking ideation that can help you do that. But the most popular ones, well, I think there's two things that are popular. One is to troll your competitor, and I think if the historic example of trolling competition is Burger King and McDonald's. But in Nigeria, we've seen Sterling Bank use that strategy quite effectively. You know, figuring out like, just little things like playing with colors, doing imaging, like little ads that allude to certain things, you know, throwing little shade here but not mentioning their name because of APCON laws. So just little things like, because the thing is that your consumer is smart, and if they see something that looks like the thing with that strategy, the reason that strategy is so effective is that consumers enjoy it and they tend to share it a lot. And the thing that you want when you're a startup is to have as much organic reach as possible. So you want to be able to build content that can be shared. And again, the biggest thing with going that approach is that you're automatically positioned as the alternative to the one. And it's always better if, in addition to just trolling them, because I mean, you can troll them but not have any USP to boast about. But if you have something, so let's say we're the lower price alternative, right? We provide the same service that these people do, but at a better price. That's something that you can take to the bank and convince your consumer to at least give you a trial on the basis of this. You know, so again, marketing is not magic. So you need to have something that's functional that you can then distill into a story and you can share to people. But yes, those are pretty much two of the biggest strategies when it comes to targeting the biggest person on the market. And people always love a good underdog story, especially Nigerians. If Nigerians see that, oh, this person looks like the underdog, oh, they're very interested in you. So you want to milk that for all that it's worth.
You also have to make sure you have real competitive advantage in some way across the value chain. There must be something that you are offering. Isn't that correct? Because if the market leader comes after you, well,
yeah. Yes.
there's a risk in that.
But I mean, to be fair as well, it will be a big blessing to you if the market leader comes after you, because then they're giving you a lot of popularity. And what happens is that they look like Goliath and you look like David. And it's like, oh, these big guys are bullying these little guys. It makes you more popular. So except they are going to go the route of like regulation to try and shut you down. If they're just going to take another swipe at you, they can go ahead. It increases your popularity dramatically. So you'll be very blessed to have that.
So that analogy of David and Goliath is another story, right? It's another story that has gone for centuries and centuries. And, you know, we continue to take different learnings from it. And you've just used this as another analogy now. So I think it just reinforces your points that, you know, stories never die, if you can call it like that. Mario, you have the table. You have the table, the floor. Mario.
All right. Good evening, Ma. Thank you very much for the session so far. I've learned so much. So my question is this. I run a personal brand and I also work with a parent brand. Basically, as a personal brand, I offer branding services, and as working with my parent brand too, that is also what we do. We offer digital services for businesses. And the truth is that in the world we are living in, we are very visual currently. So you can tell your stories. Today they say a picture tells 1,000 stories. So how do you decide how you tell your story? When do you decide when you have to, you know, write it? Because it takes a very savvy writer, as I am, to write most stories that are captivating. So how do you know when you have to write your story or show it in a picture or probably do a video about it? And then what would rank more? What will people connect with better in, you know, for marketing and all? So that's like my question.
Thank you, Mario.
So let me be sure that I understand your question. You're asking what is the better way to depict your story? Is it text? Is it visual? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Which is better? Because I know at some point in time you have to determine which one you want to use. So when do you use which?
I don't think that there's a blanket answer for that question. What you use depends on a couple things. What your brand is, what life cycle stage you are. Who your consumers are, how they consume media. So there's no one blanket answer for that. The thing with brands is you think about brands like people, right? There's no perfect time someone should get married. There's no perfect time someone should go to school. It depends on the specific dynamic of their life and what's going on with them. But I mean, generally, more generically, I can say that people are drawn to images. And I mean, as much as possible, things in visual form tend to capture our attention more. You know, so if you get the chance to do something visually, go for it. But if you're not there in your business at the moment, don't. And I think another thing I should say is don't think that things have to be picture perfect to connect. Sometimes the less calculated things are, the more they actually connect, because people can see how authentic they are. And that can be a big draw to people. So don't always think that, oh, I need to shoot this on a 90 MP camera, and then that's when things will blow. Sometimes just use your phone. Just send. I mean, I was looking through one of the how brands historically have handled PR crisis, and I saw that one of the biggest examples that people give is of an airline in America. I think it's Spirit Airline, and the video was shot by the man's wife in his bedroom, giving an apology for. I think that something happened and there was a snowstorm and thousands of people were affected and they couldn't go on flight, you know. So don't always think that things have to be perfect for them to connect. Like, good stories are not always perfect. Sometimes they're muddy, and people can relate to that because in your life you know that things aren't always perfect, you know. So focus more on relatability and just the fact that, like, take stock of where you are in your brand's life cycle and what makes sense for you.
Absolutely, you're correct. I really, really agree with you about, you know, a lot of times we wait for it to be perfect, and sometimes you've just either lost the first mover advantage or lost time, lost this, you know. Deliver it the way it is. Most critical thing is ensure that it's connecting with your customer. I align with you completely. Sammy, this will be the last question we're going to take verbally. I'll just take 2 more questions on the chat room, and then I think we should wrap up. Unless, well, of course, there are many more questions.
Okay, hello.
A bit of time. Sammy, go ahead, please.
Actually, as a couple, we are graphics designers. I'm a teacher. He's a graphics designer. I'm a caterer, and I teach, and all sorts of things. I do home lessons and stuff like that. So my basic question is, how do I use storytelling to stimulate the interest of my learners? And then for my husband, how will he use storytelling to he's good at what he does? How will he use storytelling in captivating the hearts of people with his designs and everything? That's just the basic question, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. I'll take the teaching one. And I find that the most, you know, the absolutely fabulous way to learn for kids is by making it real to them. We remember stories because they stimulate us, they stimulate our senses, and we can relate with it. So for instance, I mean, I have had people who teach, my husband was telling me a story about his maths teacher when he was in primary school, and he hated maths like a lot of us, right? And then there was this lady who came in from India, and then she starts to teach maths or arithmetic from the tangibles around them and using the stories of things around them to teach them mathematics. In fact, this lady went on to teach further maths, and while some people still failed ordinary mathematics, they passed maths because this was the lady that was teaching them, because she used stories to teach them, because she used things that were around them to teach them, and simplifying the theories and simplifying the methods. Think about church, right? For those who go to church, when the preacher is preaching and he's telling us stories from the Bible, and then as he's telling the story from the Bible, he's relating it to maybe kind of factors, situations that we go through when he starts talking about determination. Let me take Teva's story of David and Goliath, the underdog. The guy was really determined. He didn't listen to people around him. So guys, don't listen to people around you. He didn't collect Saul's armor because it was too heavy. So guys, don't load yourselves with, you know, unnecessary instruments, and don't load yourself with unnecessary, you know, bad baggage. So like that, it becomes more tangible and more real, more connected to us. Did you hear Sammy's question?
I did. Okay, so you've just explained, like, for the teaching part, and I agree.
The education. There's the graphic.
Yes, the education part. So I just want to give an example of for on the graphic side, like one of the things that I've seen recently that I thought was really, really good storytelling. There's a photographer I know. I actually don't know him directly, but I got to know him through this campaign that he ran. And this is the thing, like, small business owners always think, oh, I'm too small to run a campaign, but don't ever think that. So this guy, what he did was he was selling portraits. Like, he wants to be the guy that you think of when you want to take a professional portrait picture, right? So what he did was he did a photo series where he would dress people up and take photos of them and ask. He ran a campaign where he asked, what do you think this person does for a living, right? And people would engage. I saw like the engagement on his page was incredible. People would engage and say, oh, he's a this person, he's a that, he's a CEO, he's this, he earns X amount, he does Y thing, you know. It was so incredible. And then he would unveil the person and say, oh, this is actually my security man, you know. So what he did with that campaign was he showed how portrait photos can literally uplift the perception of a person. And I thought that was really brilliant, you know. So pretty much it's the same concept. How can you use graphics to tell whatever story you want to tell? So if you want to tell people, oh, visuals can help people understand or can help simplify understanding of your story, you can figure out a series where you actually show that. And doing that would mean that people who look at this can think, oh, if you can do this for himself, then you can do it for my business. And I can easily like just come and meet you and pay you a ton of money. So yeah, that's my take there.
Thanks, Deva. We have a comment in the group chat. Ife Awoyele, thank you for your comment. As an educator, I use the storytelling style to explain the effects of climate change on our livelihood. And that won me a Microsoft Educator Exchange Program and international events. Thank you, Ife, for that comment. Yes, well done for that. And we wish you the best. Now, I think it's good time to wrap up. I want to say a big thank you to you, Teva. Thank you for the illustrations. Thank you for the videos. And thank you for making it tangible. Remember, guys, storytelling is extremely key. We talked about when you start your business. We talked about how you can use storytelling even to deliver your competitive advantage. We talked about the power of storytelling by using the things around you. We also talked about telling your own story in the connection of your business. Finally, we said, make your business benefit or your product benefit, craft it into a story that is real and connects with your customer or even your suppliers, that connects with your audience in order to help establish the business and establish patronage. Now, I want to say something really exciting. It's exciting for me, and I'm sure it's exciting for you too, because so many people have been asking us for this. We are launching our community, entrepreneurship community, next Thursday. So next Thursday's Tech Biz is going to be for the launch of the community. It's really going to be exciting. The whole idea for us is to bring our audience together, is to bring businesses that desire help. We bring you together into a certain community. We transfer knowledge like we've always done, but more if we stretch this even further by enabling you to leverage on our network, enabling you, of course, to have access to investors, enabling you to have access to the various things that will impact your business positively. So friends, be part of next week's webinar. We will launch the community and we will share with you exactly how you can be part of that community and what comes up next. I can see it's exciting. Thank you, guys. Everyone is giving feedback. Thank you for the positive feedback concerning today's webinar. We're back on Thursday at 5 p.m. again with another topic that will be relevant to your business and help you thrive. And should you have any question whatsoever, info@ecoinnovationhub.com. info@ecoinnovationhub.com. Make sure that you can send your email there. If you want this deck, you want the presentation, you want the video, you want to go back to any of the videos that we had shared prior, ecoicenter.com/webinar. Teva, any last words?
Thank you guys for this platform. If you'd like to follow my blog, it's tevabendega.com. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teva. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Continue to stay safe. Continue to be well. Catch you on Thursday when we will be launching our community. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.